Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Let me begin by welcoming you, Commissioner Simpson, Minister Gladima of Senegal. I know we're anticipating Minister van der Straeten from Belgium will be here with us soon, and member of the European Parliament, Burkhardt. Thank you so much. Here she is, exactly on cue. Welcome to Minister van der Straeten from Belgium. Thank you to all of you. I want to say it's a great pleasure to be here today to open and moderate this event on energy efficiency, which we are so honored to be doing in collaboration with the EU here in your wonderful pavilion. The cheapest energy is the energy we don't use, and energy efficiency is the one resource every country has in abundance. The IEA's net zero emissions scenario shows us that efficiency measures could help the global economy by 1/3 more efficient by 2030. In this scenario, the global economy grows by 40% by 2030, driven by higher populations and income levels, but uses 7% less primary energy. But to do this, we must put energy efficiency first. We have the technologies we need, we just need to act now. Many parts of society, really all parts of society, need to be involved in implementing energy efficiency measures, especially at this time of such a challenging global energy crisis. But this will not happen without strong policy action. So for this event, we brought together a group of really distinguished speakers. We have two panels, actually. All of these distinguished colleagues have really been leading the way to make more energy efficiency happen faster in their own countries and really all around the world. So to get us off to a wonderful start, it's with really great pleasure that I invite our keynote speaker, the European Commissioner for Energy, Kadri Simpson, to take the floor. Commissioner, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your presence, both online but also in person. This session is dedicated to a topic that I consider crucial. Energy efficiency is often underappreciated when we talk about energy and climate policy or ending dependencies. We tend to focus on the supply side, on the need to increase renewable energy and to phase out fossil fuels. Both are, of course, absolutely necessary, but it is also clear that without being more efficient and wasting less energy, we will not be able to deliver what we agreed in Paris. Energy efficiency is a precondition for successful and cost-effective decarbonization of our economy. There is also a limit to how much energy we can generate in a sustainable way, and we must respect that limit, safeguarding our land and water and other natural resources. Energy savings and energy efficiency have been more in the spotlight in Europe this year. And for a tragic reason, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has triggered an energy security and prices crisis. And this, in turn, has made discussions on energy consumption central to our debates. We shouldn't and we cannot replace all the lost volumes of Russian fossil fuels by fossil fuels from other suppliers. Where at all possible, we must switch to renewables and reduce our energy use. This is also important in the context of tight global energy markets, where lower European demand can ease the situation for others. This summer, the EU member states agreed to reduce their gas consumption by 15%. And preliminary data shows that we have achieved this target both in August and September. We have also committed to reduce our electricity demand, especially in the peak hours. And short-term actions are necessary, but we need to ensure that to reduce our energy consumption also in the longer term, because only structural changes bring us to the necessary reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and also they will deliver us smaller energy bills. Energy efficiency is a central pillar of the EU's energy and climate policy, and also a key element for our Fit for 55 initiative, which aims to reach at least 55% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2030. Two initiatives of this major regulatory package, the Energy Efficiency Directive and the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, will increase our energy efficiency ambition and help our EU member states to achieve structural, long-lasting changes across all sectors. And the foundation of our policy is the mandatory application of the energy efficiency first principle, which is especially important when investment decisions are taken. This principle requires taking energy efficiency measures wherever they are cost efficient. Using less should always be the first option for consider. We must not lose more time in transforming our building sector. In Europe, buildings are the single largest energy consumer and are responsible for 40% of our energy use and 36% of our greenhouse gas emissions. While focusing energy efficiency makes sense, it is not always easy. And none of it can be achieved by one institution or country alone. And here I want to highlight our close cooperation with the International Energy Agency, most recently on how we can help small businesses in the current crisis using energy efficiency policy and tools. We will also remain committed to work with the Energy Efficiency Hub, a global platform for collaboration on energy efficiency, whose secretariat is hosted by the IEA. I firmly believe that energy efficiency should be our common global priority. We are ready to work with all partners to make it the cornerstone of global action on the energy transition. However, the fact that something is a common priority does not mean the path is the same for everyone. The EU has much valuable experience with improving energy efficiency that we are ready to share. But what is right for us may not be best for and feasible everywhere. And I'm therefore extremely glad that we have in our very distinguished panel today representatives also from Senegal, but also from Belgium and European Parliament. I'm grateful that Mary, Deputy Director of the IEA, has kindly expected to moderate this session. And I wish you a very fruitful discussion and thank you for your engagement in this important work.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and I know that you need to leave. I just want to say thank you so much for setting the stage for us, and just want to say, what high regard we have for everything that you're doing in the Commission, for your member states, for Ukraine, for other countries around the world in really addressing the energy security challenges of this time, and for taking the time to be with us on this really important issue. So thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you some more during the course of the week. Thanks so much. So now I would like to begin our discussion with our other really distinguished guests who are here today, and just want to make a couple more comments before we hear from them. As the Commissioner was just saying, and we truly believe at the IEA, energy efficiency really needs to be a key pillar of the response of the current high energy prices and the crisis we're facing, and there's much more progress that needs to be made. We really need to see immediate action from all sectors of society. Everyone can be playing their part. It's and much more to really build efficiency into our immediate and longer-term plans as well. So just a few questions that I think were already shared with you, but I'm just going to highlight for everyone in the audience to be thinking about. What do you all think should be done to put energy efficiency more prominently in the picture to reduce household costs, while at the same time increasing energy security and independence from unreliable suppliers? what would be the best energy efficiency solutions to support the transitions towards greener and more sustainable industrial processes for big companies, small, medium, and micro businesses, and what barriers need to be addressed. This is really an important one, I think, to be sure that we can better stimulate the uptake of energy efficiency investments at the local level for the renovation of the buildings and the support of small businesses. So I'd like to begin with you, Minister Gladima, Minister of Petroleum and Energy of Senegal. I really want to thank you for joining us here today and to say how honored we are to have you with us. So we're all delighted here to be joining you at this very special Africa COP. So, Minister, I'd like to turn to you. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la modératrice.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Moderator and Executive Director of the IEA. It's a shame that the Commissioner is already gone. We would have wanted her to stay to discuss the topics that she raised. I want to greet all the participants and the other guests, but to tell you, Mary, how happy we are in Senegal of the IEA support, because it's a long-term partnership, a long way, and you can greet Mr. Bureau, the director of the IEA, who last year we exchanged a lot regarding COP26 that now reaches its conclusions, and this is why I wanted the commissioner to be there, because she raised a particular issue by saying that paths are not always the same, but that we must share experiences. And we think today that the world has reached this phase. The climate change caused by the use of some energy, the accelerated industrialization, but are there other solutions for African countries starting to discover our fossil fuel resources? For example, gas in Senegal is important enough to produce electricity, so a cleaner energy source, but that can allow Senegal to have cheap, affordable energy, because one of the objective for the SDG 7 highlights the international cooperation to facilitate the access to research and technologies on energy efficiency. And in its national policy, the Senegal wrote the mastering of energy as a pillar to contribute sustainably to the development and the stabilization of the sector. And this is how we have adopted a law that goes from 2019 to 2023 with projects and orientations to develop for this energy efficiency. This is how we create an agency that we called a Mastering Energy Agency, and this was created with the IEA. And the mission is to promote the rational use of energy in all forms and in all sectors, and to implement the identified projects. This agency has projects for building, administration, and local authorities, but also transportation and industry in its strategic plan. By 2030, to control this energy, these projects identify are to have efficient equipment and to review the equipment to reduce the bill of the state regarding electricity and to raise awareness for the audience and the public, and also to be in charge of public lighting and energy efficiency for building. We have noticed a huge amount of savings, which is 14 billion of CFA francs savings, with 66 programs being carried out. This is assessed to nearly 40 billion dollars savings, with a final consumption of 224,75,000 emissions that will be saved. We need fundings and we are working at it. We have signed a partnership agreement to implement a service provider company called Super Esco. This company, whose funding is there to improve energy efficiency of buildings. So the AMA also supports the transposition of the directive for this efficiency regarding the labeling of electrical lamps, because we use lamps that uses a lot of electricity with low tension electricity and new equipments that are measures to fight against this problem. We also have implemented an electricity code, creating a framework for buildings for electricity use, but also for systems for building. We think today that there are some smart buildings using less energy than some other buildings. So with this new electricity code and with the urban code, we will be able to save energy. We are
Also have the lighting, and we are using the solar lighting to follow the quality of lighting. And we have another program which is EcoFridge, to cool, for the cooling, to use less energy within the building. We had some buildings which take a lot of energy and consume a lot of, so if we highlight those buildings should have a much more important efficiency. Another example that would might bring is that the best energy is the one that we do not produce. We do not produce it, so the old buildings are being renovated, and so we have other insulation, and in those old buildings we have an excess of energy. Not to monopolize the wording, this is what we have been doing in Senegal concerning the energy efficacy and efficiency, so as to reduce this billing of electricity. So I thank you once more for the invitation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much, Minister Gladima. It's clear that, under your leadership, Senegal is really achieving a lot, making excellent progress in your focus on energy efficiency measures in so many respects. So thank you for sharing your experience with us and also your clear commitment to continuing to make progress in this area. So I'd now like to turn to Minister van der Straten of Belgium. I know that Belgium, too, has been taking some really important decisions with respect to reducing energy consumption and savings and energy efficiency. So we really look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and also in this panel hosted by IEA. Et aussi ce que mon homologue, la ministre Gladima de Sénégal.
Also, what Mrs. Minister has talked about, all the efforts that we had concerning this issue. We had last year a mission in which Africa was an ally from this focus area for AIE in general. So to be here in Egypt, in Africa as well, to work with the scope 27, it's extremely important. So my colleague has talked about what you have been doing in Senegal, and so it is an inspiration, I should say, for us, the European countries, because the energy efficiency, it's a matter of global justice. So you have talked about what you have discovered, your own gas resources, and if we in the European continent we can reduce the consumption of fossil fuels and energies, it is a matter of global justice. So you have said that the reserves that we have
Et donc,
we didn't pay attention to the results. So in this case, we should provide electricity in a better way. So the best energy is the one which is not produced, but also which is not consumed, and it is produced in a different way. Today, we are here together. We have a war in the European continent, international crisis, and we have the consequences in different countries. And
energy crisis, the climate crisis is to work on energy efficiency, because this will secure supply. We need less energy, and it will also stabilize prices. And we have in our country, in Belgium, we have done a lot to help people pay their energy bills, but this is a short-term solution. We have to help people on the long term, also businesses on the long term, and that is investing in energy efficiency. And energy savings will be crucial, not only this winter, but also the next winters to come, the next years to come. And it will make sure that we are less vulnerable to these energy prices. And so how do you do this, and what are the barriers? And I want to use this opportunity to talk about norms and standards. Which we have worked on a lot in Europe in the past decades. Everyone knows our eco-design directive, the labeling on products and on goods, and also the Senegalese colleague Gladima, she talked about electroménager. The same in Belgium and in the European Union. We have this labeling who says that an appliance is efficient in energy use. This is the inspiration for other sectors. This is the inspiration for the building sector. We need a fast acceleration in the renovation rate of our buildings, which are energy consuming. Specifically in Belgium, we have one of the largest building stocks in Europe, and so that means that we can make a lot of progress there. And standards and norms will help us there. At the same time, leaving no one behind. And when we are talking about a higher renovation rate, we should also talk about financing, because it's easy to say if you are a rich country, but there are many countries who are not rich and whose people are suffering the most from these high energy bills. And so that's why we are looking carefully into the budget from Repower EU, and we see, and this was it was not only we that saw that, but it was EIB who saw that there is an underutilization of Repower EU funds for fossil fuel infrastructure, for gas infrastructure. And so our plea would be that these funds should be redirected, and should be redirected to energy efficiency as a financing way for those member states who have difficulties. But the same goes, standards and norms, it's not only buildings, it's also for cars, for example. So that the energy performance standards for cars, we already have decided at European Union level that there will be an ending of the sale of internal combustion engines by 2035, which is a good thing. So if we green and electrify our cars, we will have a cleaner planet. And we are waiting for a proposal from the European Commission also on CO2 standards for heavy-duty vehicles. And last but not least, eco-design and energy labeling remains important. And why? Because a lot of our houses on the European continent are heated still by fossil fuel-powered heating appliances. And so we should phase out this one. It's very inspiring to be here in Africa, and why? And this was also the work that we have done at the IEA level, is this continent can be the example. And in what? In leapfrogging. You can avoid all the mistakes that we made. We passed through fossil fuels, and we are now so dependent on regimes like Russia. And we have faced this, we have experienced this the hard way. We are faced on our continent with a war in which energy is used as a weapon. And you in your continent, you have abundant sun, you have also abundant wind, And you can leapfrog directly into these renewable energy resources. And as you have said, work at the same time on this energy efficiency. And we, at the same time, who are for a lot of it responsible for the climate crisis, we will need to bring down as soon as possible, as fast as possible, our addiction on fossil fuels, and energy efficiency is one of the key pillars to achieve this climate neutrality by 2050. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister, and for giving us that broader overview of all of the kinds of measures that can and really need to be taken, from appliances to buildings to all across our energy consumption landscape. And it's a really tall task, but you're absolutely right that it's important to start where we can. I would now like to turn to our member of the European Parliament, Mr. Delara Burkhardt. We're really looking forward to hearing about your experiences within the European Parliament and your home country of Germany, and working on energy efficiency issues as well. So thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me here. And I mean, it's hard to add on if there already have been so many smart things being said about this. Just to underline, I sometimes have the impression when we talk about our reaction to the climate crisis, on the energy crisis, energy efficiency is somehow the underdog. Although it's a very important tool, and a tool that really, especially in the times of climbing pricing that we are facing now, the difficult winter that is coming ahead, it's a very effective tool to actually bring down the bills for the people. So I think this is a very important discussion, and I'm happy that we have a prominent discussion here. As the energy efficiency policy have a very, very big social dimension, and they are very much linked to the question of global justice, as you have been saying, and equality. And you have to also be honest about the situation, because even before the war in Ukraine, we had the problematic situation that people had to decide whether they heat or eat. This has been a reality for families before, and this is something that energy efficiency should have been addressed even earlier. So the urgency now is bigger, but the problem has been there for a long, long time. With the Energy Efficiency Directive we are discussing right now on the European level, and the renovation wave we are discussing on the European level, we are setting long-term goals how to overcome our dependency on natural gas. And of course, this is also a tool to help against the soaring energy prices. However, what is very crucial to maybe sharpen also a little bit in the European discourse, that we have to see that the energy efficiency policies we are using, they are targeting different groups differently. So the way how we shape the policy instruments, it affects how the most vulnerable people are affected by it. So especially as the title of our panel is Energy Efficiency as a Valuable Resource, we have to discuss who has the access to this valuable resource. This is a global question, but this is also a societal question within the EU. We are seeing, and we are seeing some answers in the European Commission's proposals on that. For example, the directive proposal pursues the call for the protection of vulnerable consumers, since the EU member states are actually asked to prioritize vulnerable customers, people living in energy poverty, or those living in social housing when implementing the energy efficiency measures that are part of this directive. They also include targeted measures for EU member states to have information, awareness campaigns, etc., to empower these groups, as well as of making public funding directly linked to them. But everything is very welcome. It's highly necessary. But it's still not targeted enough because all those measures, they are voluntarily and they are part of, yes, you should, but not about how you have to. And this is why I want to come up maybe to add up what you said on the repower. I think these are all important tools. I would have said them too, so I will drop them. But as we are seeing right now, we are having today the Gender Day of the COP. And it has been 1 year ago on the last COP where I was presenting a study together with the Commissioner Nicolas Schmidt on the feminist Green Deal. And this is something that is really, really important for energy efficiency too, because we have to see who is living in the weekly isolated homes, who has in fact less income and less influence on what kind of energy my house is using, if I'm a renter, for example. So there is a big effect of women as being the ones who are suffering when energy policies are not targeted enough. So there is a bigger problem for women to be affected by energy poverty in a sense. And I think our political answers have to address that in the way how we define energy poverty, in the way how we collect data to make the instruments we are using more targeted, to make sure that the massive investments we now have to do, they reach the people who need the help the most. So I think this is something that is there, it's in the room, it's the elephant in the room, but in the shaping of the policies, we are not doing it enough, and this is something that I really will tell Kathy Simpson on another time, but I think this is something that really crucially has to come if we want to overcome energy poverty as a tool. So maybe to stop with that, because there had been a lot of smart things already been said.
Thank you so much. We've been really fortunate to have such a distinguished all-female panel here today. Really have appreciated your valuable contributions to this discussion. It is so encouraging to hear what is taking place in your countries and in the European Parliament. Mr. Gladima, I know you'd like to come in on a point, and then we're going to change over, move to our next panel waiting here. So please, the floor is yours, Minister.
So I'll take the floor again because Mrs. Minister of Belgium has said something very interesting, and I think we must really talk about this climate justice, because when we talk about energy transition, I'm not talking about efficiency anymore, but transition, but we must start from somewhere. So today, how many African people do not have electricity? Can we talk to these Africans about energy transitions? No, we can't. So when we're talking about justice, we must take into account these people who need to be happy, who need to have a much brighter future. We are told that we have a lot of sun, but there are some places with no sun. In the evening, we don't have sunshine, so we need to store energy so that people can have electricity at night. And even if we talk about renewable energy, they will need to use mines, and this means using fossil fuel again. So regarding this justice, this climate justice, because they have a lot of sunshine, you're told to use a lot of sunshine. But climate justice wish that together, hand in hand, we try to see what are the technologies that exist, not to make the same mistakes. Because we will defend the planet, but let's not leave men unhappy. They have to be happy on this planet, to use the resources with less poverty. There was a panel this morning where we were talking about women and how they cook. How many women still use fire to cook? There is health issues linked to that. Um, and some give birth in disastrous conditions because they don't have electricity, because they don't have the health infrastructures. But to build these infrastructures to be efficient, they need to be built, but we're not going to build them with wood or with clay. We need to also have, concrete. So Yes, Africa says yes to efficiency, to the transition for climate change fight, but let's accept that some fossil energy can allow Africa to have access and to give a better future for young people. I want to clarify something. I didn't want to say that because you have sunshine, just deal with that. What I wanted to say was that the responsibility starts at our place, meaning the European continent. So our addiction to fossil fuel energy is there, and this creates a stress on fossil fuel reserves elsewhere in the world. So it's necessary and very important that we reduce very strongly our consumption of fossil fuel energy. And this would be the start of a global justice, because otherwise, and we have done that in the past, and I'm not proud of this, but in the past, there are bad examples on how we colonized resources of other continents. So I agree with you completely, and this was not my intention to say that. So that's why I wanted to clarify that. And at the same time, I also think that we have sunshine and wind, and in Belgium we have a very small North Sea, so we don't have a lot of sun. So it's a challenge for storing this energy. That's why we have a lot of investments in batteries to be able to store sunshine and wind when there is no sunshine and no sunlight, and wind. So we are trying to do without, these resources. So this is why we must be innovative in our technology. And last point, the circumstances, and especially women's condition that you just talked about with the open fires.
Not only here in Africa, but also in South America. This is also a part of global justice, and where we should look for leapfrogging. And last year I was also and then I will conclude. Last year I was also in an IEA panel. Our Colombian colleague who talked about clean energy access to all, and who in the mountains installed solar panels combined with batteries. So I do believe that solutions exist today that will help us to leapfrog, and that we don't necessarily have to pass through a transition of fossil fuels.
Thank you very much, ministers. I know this has taken a little bit of additional time, but this is a really important set of issues, and so I'm glad that you had the additional time to talk a little bit more about them. As I said at the outset, we are, and as our executive director has said many times, and I said when I was in Africa, right, for the Africa Energy Week, Minister Gladima, this is we're really facing the first truly global energy crisis. So we have multiple challenges before us: the climate crisis, the energy crisis, an economic and a food crisis as well. And so this is a period where we're obviously looking for solutions to address both the immediate challenges and needs to meet energy supply and demand, and address heating through the winter and all of these sorts of things, while at the same time keeping our eye on the net zero goals that many countries have pledged to, and of course on our climate goals. So I hope that you will be able to continue this conversation. It's really an important one, especially right here in Egypt at this African COP. And I want to thank you all very much. We're going to have just a shorter period of time for our next panelist, but really thanks so much, and we'll take just a very short break to make the transition. Thank you, ministers, and thank you all. Well, welcome back, everyone. I'm really delighted to introduce our next set of panelists. And I'm so sorry, our time is going to be rather short, so I'm going to ask each of you to speak in 3 to 4 minutes, if possible, rather than the longer time period we had in mind. But continuing the theme of governance, we move to someone who's at the front line of implementation of energy efficiency, Mr. Trzaskowski. And he is the mayor of Warsaw and president of the Commission for Environment, Climate Change, and Energy of the Committee of the Region. So, Mr. Trzaskowski, we really look forward to hearing from you and the challenges you face in implementing energy efficiency at the city level. We're really honored by your presence. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon. Well, I would submit to you that we are all in a pretty bad mood watching what's happening at COP and the perspectives for being ambitious. So that's why I'm absolutely convinced that we need to look to the cities to provide a bit of leadership, because in quite a lot of settings, it is the cities which not only are more ambitious, but also tackle climate change on their own, sometimes even when their governments are much more lukewarm towards engaging in fighting climate change. That's why we are here. That's why we are here to talk about the role of the cities in fighting global change. And of course, we talk about energy efficiency. So one would think that this is the least controversial of all the things that we are doing and of all the things that we are discussing. Yet, even there, some of the member states are not that ambitious as they should. And of course, the biggest problem now is that we are at the front line. The cities and the regions are at the front line of most of the crises that we're dealing with. We were the ones dealing with the pandemics. We are the ones dealing, in my case, with the refugee influx from Ukraine. We are the ones dealing with the energy crisis. And of course, we are at the forefront fighting climate change, because 60–70% of the emissions are produced in the cities. And when we talk about energy efficiency, that's where we can really be ambitious. The only thing is that we need to think out of the box. How can we think out of the box? Empower the citizens and allow them to also trade in energy and become not only consumers, but the ones who are going to be active on the market. But for that, we need the European Union, and we also need the member states to be a little bit more ambitious and more flexible. Because if we want to really make strides towards more energy efficiency, we need to devolve power, and we need to devolve the way in which we deal with renovation and retrofitting and so on and so forth. And of course, a massive renovation of buildings is going to help us do at least two things at the same time, because not only are we fighting with energy climate changes, but also we are fighting with energy poverty. We are tackling poverty as such by helping buildings to be renovated. The only problem is that of course requires enormous costs. And that's why we have been in the Committee of the Regions, but also elsewhere, in the Eurocities, in the C40, we have been talking about direct financing for the cities, which should allow us to actually meet our ambitions. Because that's where the real action is. And if you look at the Repower EU, quite a lot of tasks that the Commission has put forward were actually put on our shoulders. So that's the way in which I think we could be a bit more ambitious when we look into the future, when we would start to think out of the box, be more flexible, devolve power, include consumers in a serious way, and allow cities and regions to be much more active. And as I've said, for that, you need to organize, and I'm absolutely convinced that we could do it in Europe. The European Commission could organize pan-European projects, like we've done with 100 green cities, like we are doing with mitigation measures, where you push cities to be ambitious, like Warsaw, for example, declared as the first Polish city climate neutrality. But in return for that, you organize pan-European projects where you, for example, retrofit the most important, most difficult historical buildings. That's the way forward. You want to be ambitious? Talk to us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I think you made a lot of really important points there. The work has to be done very much at the local level, and everyone has to be doing their part. So thank you for your leadership and your really clear comments there. I'd now like to turn to Ms. Melissa Tomasini, who's a research assistant at the University of Manchester and a research specialist at the Harvard Kennedy School and the Canales Project. So she is also a nominated youth advisor by the UN Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, for meaningful engagement of young people in sustainable energy planning. So, Melissa, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. As a young professional who's making her way into the energy space, capitalizing on the interlinkages between environmental sustainability, youth inclusion, and gender equality, I'm humbled to join this extraordinary lineup of speakers. Amid a worsening global energy crisis that has entailed unprecedented supply chains disruptions, looming outages, and soaring prices, energy efficiency is to be put at the center stage, not only of economic performance, but also of climate solutions, while contributing to decarbonization and energy security targets. If we look at the figures from the International Energy Agency, it is clear how energy improvements of the past few years fall short of the 1.9% average rate expected for 2021, with the lowest efficiency progress being recorded in the buildings and industrial sectors. In the post-viral scenario aggravated by extreme weather events and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it is therefore incumbent to wrap up joint action to mitigate the most detrimental impacts of these multiple crises on households, consumers, and businesses, and facilitate the green recovery. Against this backdrop, governments have mobilized something around 250 billion a year for energy efficiency improvements between 2020 and 2023, according to the IEA Sustainable Recovery Tracker. Such measures have the merits of easing the burden of exorbitant prices in the short term, especially for low-income groups and households who suffer from energy insecurity. Nonetheless, these are to be complemented with long-term actions and mechanisms to enact structural efficiency measures to reduce energy consumption. We all know that the European Union is well positioned to combine these short-term needs and more systemic changes in the energy efficiency market with a view to achieving its the energy efficiency target of at least 32.5% by 2030 that has been increased recently in the REPower EU plan launched last May. How can this existing framework be further strengthened to ensure that this objective that has been indeed increased translates into a final energy consumption equal to 705 million tons of oil equivalent? To start with, a whole of a government and whole of a society approach that prioritizes cross-cutting energy efficiency action will maximize energy efficiency gains and improvements throughout all sectors. In this context, a people-centered approach aimed at promoting behavioral change for smarter energy consumption is expected to produce lower costs, greater access, and healthier environments as well. Second, efficiency-related investments in a scaling up logic should be regarded as crucial elements to increase demand, create favorable market conditions, and boost private sector investments. Moreover, these measures shall be complemented with new digital business models, such as energy as a service and virtual power plant services for distributed energy resources. Leveraging digital innovation will thus enable smart control, energy system optimization, and better management while protecting consumers and system security. Government spending on research and development in energy efficiency declined in 2021 after a decade of intensive growth. and transportation keeps leading the way. And so more innovation and finance mechanism like venture capital investments across various sectors, including buildings, are needed to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. I don't know whether we are running short of time. I would have some more recommendations, policy recommendations regarding the SMEs sector.
Okay, maybe
I'll
we'll pass the floor because I'm looking at the clock here, and I'm so sorry to have rushed you. But thank you so much, Melissa. And let me now turn to Tracy Crow, Senior Director of Sustainable Energy for All. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. And would like to thank the IEA and the EU for organizing the event. So we've heard a lot of comments already. There's not a lot of new things I think I can add. I'll try to focus on a few things as I see the clock counting down. But we heard the Commissioner Simpson talk about energy efficiency needing to become more visible and becoming more visible. It really is. With the crisis that's going on in Europe, it is more visible in Europe. But for those of us who have been around a while, this has happened before. For those of us who remember the 1970s, and there's a few of us in here, we had the oil crisis and we had a real focus on energy efficiency. This has happened many times before. It gets elevated and then it de-elevates, it gets forgotten. And I think that's the critical thing, is how do we figure out a way to keep it elevated, to embed it, to institutionalize it. We've got voluntary measures we've heard about that only goes so far, and how do we embed those really so that they're part of our everyday structure, everyday life, but also I think it's becoming how do we institutionalize all these energy efficiency measures. So energy efficiency is the first fuel. We've been saying that as well for many years. But it has to be the first response to supply uncertainty, to price volatility, and certainly the climate crisis. And let me also say that energy efficiency should be the first response, first fuel for energy access. So it's important to remember that the more efficient you are, the further the energy that we're producing can go. So as we're looking at trying to electrify the 733 million people that don't have electricity, energy efficiency is critical to that. So let's also keep that in mind. But to make this work, we need to increase investment. That's really something that's not going away. It needs to be at, I think, annual energy efficiency investment needs to increase about threefold by 2030. So that's quite a challenge. And every panel that I've heard, finance is always a key. I think it is being increased, but certainly not fast enough. So one of the things that we're doing at SE for All, and really thinking about elevating this as well, is that we're working with partners, including through mission efficiency. This was formerly known as the 3% Club, recently rebranded, trying to increase the visibility through a rebranding, calling it mission efficiency. And it's bringing together the actions, the commitments, the goals on energy efficiency by governments, by organizations, initiatives, cities, and it's important as a platform to elevate the narrative, to communicate out solutions, relay the benefits of energy efficiency, both at the micro and the macro levels, locally and globally. So we really need platforms like mission efficiency. Quickly, just touching on a few solutions, because I see that we're running out of time. One point to make is that it is important that we have to understand different contexts and create bespoke solutions. And that's really important when we're talking about, I think, Europe, North America, South America, Africa, Asia. It's a different context, and we have to keep that in mind. It's great to think about sharing the learnings, and leapfrogging is a great idea and concept. I'm not sure we've quite been able to put it into practice in reality, though. But we have to keep in mind the context. But just a few things in terms of solutions. We need to simplify access to energy audits and energy efficiency trainings. That's really important. access to affordable finance is crucial for small and medium-sized enterprises. So we can't forget to think about the SMEs that are out there and what can help them. Mechanisms such as ESCOs, the energy service companies, is one great example, which they're able to handle and bundle smaller projects together, access larger and then more preferred terms of finance. EESL in India, Climbergy in the Philippines are two examples of that. The Green Technology Selector is another solution. EBRD, which is working with Mission Efficiency on this, has provided local private banks with a simple-to-use tool that has pre-selected measures that are approved for finance. So this allows the bankers to really minimize transaction costs and reduce the due diligence cost as well. So just a few solutions to throw out there. But again, let's just not forget where we are today. Let's not forget energy efficiency again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tracy. You touched on a lot of really important points there with respect to finance and investment, really stepping up investment, especially in emerging and developing economies, so that we can all work together to address the not only energy efficiency issues, but really important energy access issues, which I know is at the heart and core of what SE for All is doing, but also, really help with the longer-term energy and transition as well. Really appreciate your comments, too, on the importance of understanding that every country and region has a little different context and that there will be a need for specific and very variable solutions to achieve the same goal. So that's I think, a really important point to keep in mind. I'm going to wrap this up. I could spend a long time speaking with each one of you, and I wish we did have more time because you've been an excellent panel, and I'm so sorry to have rushed you. I just want to say that I think you've touched on a couple of really important points, that we really need to engage all sectors of society in the energy efficiency solutions and strengthen international collaboration really across the board. And I think you all touched on that in that respect. And just, I forgot to mention, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much to you, the city of Warsaw, and all the citizens of Poland for everything you're doing for Ukraine. It's such an important contribution that you're making, and we all have to remember that the challenge is continuing, very much so. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll just end by saying the IEA stands ready to work with all of you to support the global community in accelerating progress on energy efficiency so that we can all meet our energy and climate goals working together. Once again, please, audience, join me in thanking our panel.